All right, and thank you for joining us again for another edition of the Navigating the Coronavirus Economy series. My name's Tom DuFore. I'm the CEO with Big Sky Franchise Team, and today's session is all about current trends in franchise sales and franchise marketing. And we've done this session. This is February, what's today's date? February 12th. And this is a live session here. So if you're watching a recording of it, it's February 12th, 2021. And we're going to go take a look at some economic data and indicators and take a look to see what's happening in the world and how it's impacting current franchise marketing trends, marketing efforts, sales, and so on. And so for this session, we've been doing this on a monthly basis here the last several months. And it's pretty interesting to see some of the data points that come out. And one of the things we like to start with is some high level macroeconomic data, just as a starting point. I think it helps give us an idea of what's going on, who's out there, what's happening out there and how it might be impacting your business on a local level. Sometimes we feel what I've been calling these ripple effects from a broad perspective. And we'll talk about this in a little bit. I think I've been hearing and seeing just some of these, quote, ripples that may have been delayed for the last month or 2 months or 3 months that have surfaced over the last month or so. So with that being said, I am going to share my screen and we're going to start with, not that right there. We are going to start with this right here, which is a report that was put together and published by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And this was an email that came out this week. It was sent out February 10th. So a couple days ago. And I thought that this was a really interesting information here to talk about. So first, what I'd like to talk about here is the jobs report. And as you can see, we added 49,000 jobs in the month of January as a U.S. economy. Unemployment rate dropped 6.3%, which seems like a good indicator. We'll talk about that more in a second. And wages increased by 0.2%. So wage increase is good. The overall labor force, however, reduced by 406,000 people. So when we take a look at that and we see what's going on, if you see this unemployment rate drop from, it was previously at 6.7%, you can see here in the email that the unemployment rate dropped so drastically because 400,000 people just stopped looking for a job. So they're no longer considered active participants in the unemployment in the labor force. So that is, for me, why the unemployment rate is and always has been can be a very confusing and misleading number. A low unemployment rate does not mean necessarily that we have a high employment rate. It just means that the people who are actively looking for jobs, the percentage of those people actively looking for jobs and who have jobs, that's really what it's showing. But what about that person who's maybe been looking for a job for the last 6 months or 8 months, decides, I don't want to do it anymore. I'm taking a break. I'm taking a break from job hunting, which, by the way, leads us into the franchise discussion, because there are a good portion of this 406,000 people who just dropped out of the labor force. I think that there's a good chance that a percentage of these folks are then saying, you know what, I'm going to start my own business. Which leads us into our franchise discussion. So I think that that's a really interesting point to talk about. This is a really interesting chart. This is the jobs gap in terms of what the economic employment looked like prior to the pandemic. And so right here, it shows that we lost 22 million jobs in March and April of 2020, which is it's so hard to comprehend that. I know we all lived through it, but thinking back, it's just hard to comprehend 22 million jobs. I mean, that's like the entire That would be like the entire metro New York, New York City, the entire metro, just like, everyone losing their job. I mean, it's so insane to think about. And we've added back about 12.5 million, so more than half in a very short window, which is great. And you can see this bounce back. So the red is the jobs lost, and the blue is what the jobs that are currently there. So you can see it's almost 10 million jobs that were down. So we still have a way, quite a ways to go here to building that up. So let's go ahead and take a look here. Here's another unemployment. This is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Census Bureau. So it gives a breakdown, this directly from the federal government to show what the numbers look like. So if you're looking for that, you can take a look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And now, oh wait, I skipped a chart. Where did my chart go? Here it is. Before I jump into that, I wanted to take a look at one other chart, which is the U.S. retail traffic. So this is one we haven't seen for a while. It hadn't been updated and been available, but it is now. So I'm enthused to be able to showcase this again. And this is showing you what's going on in U.S. retail traffic. And what I think is really interesting to see is that as of February 5th, so about a week ago, that's the last time this was updated, as of February 5th, 2021, retail traffic in the U.S. was down just 2.8% from the pre-pandemic benchmark that was set by Locate AI. I think that's really significant, 2.8%. If we were to see that retail traffic were down 2.8% in any given week or time period from a benchmark prior to the pandemic, no one would probably think a thing about it. No one would even notice. Maybe there was a snowstorm that blew through somewhere in the Midwest or Northeast, or maybe there was some large event or something. You pick any kind of thing that could have happened. So this is a really powerful indicator. Certainly, retail sales, while it's a small percentage of the whole economy as a whole, as its percentage share, it has big ripple effects because it helps showcase what is happening for some of the consumer confidence going out, being out, spending money, which then ripples through the economy. So this is a really good indicator here. One other thing I wanted to point out about the unemployment rate, out of those 49,000 jobs that were added, only 6,000 came from the private sector, okay? Which means private sector was pretty flat for new jobs being added. And for a lot of the jobs lost during that time period, almost all were in retail and hospitality. Largely due to what I would imagine is from some of those large states, I believe California and New York and some large cities that had locked things down again or shut things down or tightened restrictions on people being able to go out and do things. And I know that there were others, those just come to mind because they're big states, but just thinking about how we're seeing some of those ripple effects that may have happened in the month of December going into January. But this retail trend is pretty interesting. And you can see this dip in retail, you can kind of see this impact here. Some of these lockdowns started happening again, October, November, December. Kind of interesting. Some of these lockdowns, all of a sudden, here's Christmas, New Year's, maybe some end of Christmas shopping deals that were going on. But I think that's interesting. Retail traffic down 1.6% there. So anyway, I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place here, but I just want to share some of this information so that you can see that for what's happening from consumer and from the general consumer standpoint. And by the way, this data, let's see if they give this. Yeah, so here we go. Look at this. The data was constructed from 280 billion anonymized mobile GPS observations with 3 million retail locations for the entire United States. So that data is pretty interesting, but also kind of scary that our cell phone pings are getting picked up for some of this data. Here's a couple other things. Change by city. So you see percentage change by city. So these different areas, Minneapolis, Boston, these are the highest reduction. And then what is interesting to see here, we see some growth. Austin, Raleigh, Colorado Springs, El Paso, Arlington, Tulsa, Fort Worth, Mesa, Arizona, Tucson, Seattle, Washington, big surge. Jacksonville, Phoenix, Oklahoma City, Tampa, Las Vegas, Albuquerque, big surges there. So anyway, just to show some highlights there. So let's go ahead and jump into the January Startup Sentiment Index. So this confirms the headline here. This confirms a 2021 startup surge. 2021 startup surge. Record 22% of respondents are current owners seeking a second business. So this is from the Franchise Insights report. This is from their this is from their Startup Sentiment Index that they publish each month. And this is some really interesting data for us to take a look at. Surge in startups. So this is how many people are planning. If you're planning on opening a new business, when do you plan to do it? Are you planning to open it this month, in 2 to 3 months, 4 to 6 months, 7 to 12 months, or no longer, or you don't know? I mean, more than a year, you're just not sure. It's really someone who's the longer or they don't know, that's your quintessential tire kicker. Okay. They don't know what they're doing. And so they're just kicking tires trying to figure out, well, I don't know. But everyone else is in this pipeline. And what they're saying is a mid-year surge. So if you look at this month, it's the bright green number here, the really bright green. And these are people who are thinking about opening businesses this year or this month. I mean, so it peaked here in August, it dropped down, and look at this rise over the last 4 or 5 months here. Kind of leveled out in December, dipped just a hair in January, but look at that. And then look at this huge spike for 4 to 6 months out. Look at this, that dark green line is 4 to 6 months out. So if you can see that, hopefully I'll try to zoom in a little bit more. There we go. You can see here that 4 to 6 months from now, look at that surge. It's the dominant leader. A really high number of folks are responding with that. So this month, 2 to 3 months from now, so as it says, 4 to 6 months from now, expect to see a lot of new businesses that are coming out. So here are some highlights that it talks about. Let's see, entrepreneurs expressing intent to start 4 to 6 months out rose to a record 25.6% of respondents, by far the highest on record, the highest. So that's pretty remarkable that a new record was set for people looking to start a business in the next 4 to 6 months, and indexing at 167% of January 2020. These are the highest levels ever recorded by franchiseinsights.com by their Small Business Startup Sentiment Index of individuals who have recently inquired about businesses for sale. The survey was conducted January 21st to the 26th, 2021, in the days after the inauguration, amid news of multiple vaccine options with high efficacy becoming available to millions of Americans. Okay, so I mean, you want to talk about recent data, this is about as recent as it can get. Okay, future business conditions. Respondents were more optimistic, with 44.4% believing that in 3 months, business conditions will be better or much better than now, up from 42.6% in December. Access to funding, so this continues to be a concern. Seems access to funding always seems to kind of be a concern there, but entrepreneurs' concerns are growing, with those seeing funding as harder or much harder to obtain, rising to 37.6% in January from 29.2% in December. So what does that mean? Well, that means about 1 out of every 3 future budding entrepreneur is worried about access to capital. So that means if you're in franchise sales, franchise marketing, that means 1 out of every 3 leads coming in your door on average here is worried about funding. So what does that mean you need to do? That means you need to have a plan for how you're going to help guide them through that process. How are you going to help guide them through that? Making sure you have franchise lending resources available, or franchise. There are a lot of great franchise lending organizations out there that specialize specifically with loans for franchisees. So if you're not talking to companies like Fran Fund or Guidance or any of these organizations out there, there are lots of them. If you need some referrals, we have some great referrals we can share with you. These are organizations you should be talking to. Here's what's really interesting is the demographic side of the business. I'll actually pull up this chart to showcase the demographics here. Where did it go? Here it is. So out of the demographics, you can see percentage share of inquiries based on age, and they actually use the generation, what generation you belong to, which, by the way, if you haven't listened to this last week's podcast on Multiply Your Success that we produce, it's called Multiply Your Success, available multiplyyoursuccesspodcast.com. Yvonne, maybe you could type that into the chat box for everyone if you want to go to multiplyyoursuccesspodcast.com and listen to the Dr. Candace talk about generations in the workforce. She's a generations expert. Just happens, just do a little plug for you, but definitely check that out. So multiplyyoursuccesspodcast.com and listen to Dr. Candace about generations in the workforce. But what's interesting here for generations, Gen X is still the largest share of inquiries in looking to purchase or start up a business, which generally makes sense. You know, that 40 to maybe 55-ish zone age person. You have the second highest here is the millennials or Gen Y in this dark green. And what's interesting to note here is this light blue down at the bottom. These are the baby boomers. And take note here. Look, at boomers were about 25% here back in January, dropped 17, popped back up close to 25. And then once the pandemic hit, kind of declined here to that 15 to 20% range. And then December and January happened and boom, popped right back up here to around 25% of people looking. So for those in franchise sales and franchise marketing, what does that mean? Well, it means that you have a really wide range of people you're going to be talking to, ranging from 30-somethings all the way up to 60-somethings. So you've got 30, 40, 50, 60-somethings. You got 40, 50 years of age difference with different cultural preferences and norms and what they're looking for. So what does that mean for you as a business, as a franchise sales person or franchise marketing people? What's your messaging saying? And how are you scheduling people, talking to people, going through these different things for you to be thinking about while we're taking a look at this. And then the last piece I want to show on this Startup Sentiment Index, and this is all available, by the way, for download. This is the January 2021 Franchise Insights Startup Sentiment Index. And I found this one really, really interesting. So more aspiring business owners are currently employed. So we take a look at this. This chart is showing the people who are inquiring about starting a business today. How many of them are full-time, working full-time, is this blue color. How many are working part-time in green? How many are freelancers or consulting, which is yellow? I guess sometimes a running joke is if you're never unemployed, you're just a consultant. So sometimes folks like to view it in that regard. But this yellow piece, the red is a business owner, and then this royal blue is an active military. And if we look all the way on the far right and we take a look here at what's been happening, you can see that 46% by far, and you can look back several months, by far the largest percentage share of folks looking to buy a franchise are currently full-time employed or part-time employed. That would certainly make a lot of sense. What's interesting is this percentage of folks that are considered freelance or consultants. So, which makes me wonder, are these freelancers or consultants more kind of operating more of a hobby? That's what I wonder. Are they maybe a freelance photographer that's kind of run a little side, quote, side hustle business and are looking to get into it? I don't know, but just some things for you to think about. Maybe they're looking to start, quote, a real business, unquote, that maybe they're thinking about. I don't know, but just something for you to take into consideration. But the big point that the index is making for this month is look at the growth of business owners, existing business owners looking to buy a business or start up a business. So if we go back over here to look at January of 2020, you can see that the number has pretty consistently been somewhere around 15 to maybe 18% of the total share of people looking to buy. But notice, if you notice, a surge in April here, what happened? Well, if you remember, things got really bad in April. January was a little rough. It was a little rough in January. Look at this surge in percentage share. So it makes me wonder when we look at the data point, if we know the number of respondents, did maybe the number of respondents shrink? I don't know. I haven't looked at the total numbers, and maybe the actual number of business owners stayed the same, so their percentage grew. Or are these maybe business owners that their business is doing well or well enough, and they see an opportunity to get into a new business during an economic shock or an economic downturn? Just things for you to be thinking about when you're talking to your prospective buyers or prospective candidates. That is some data from Franchise Insights. Here's another really interesting report that came out. This came out February 9th. So this came out earlier this week. Again, today is the 12th, so about 3 days ago, this came out. And I think it's interesting to show, it just talks about here that the top ranked states in terms of franchise interest grew at a slower pace in 2020 as more mid-sized states heat up in franchise sales interest. So big states that have led the charge for a while, and you can see it here, they list out here, we've got Georgia as number one, Nevada as number two, Florida, Louisiana, Maryland. Then look at here, South Carolina, Texas is a big state. Now look at Mississippi, New Jersey, Delaware, Alabama, North Carolina, Virginia, Arizona, Tennessee, Colorado. But look at the percentage gain that we look up here on this chart. So we look at the percentage annual change in franchise index interest. A green state is significant change, and kind of this tan colored is a negative change. And this lighter blue color is almost neutral. It's kind of a small or negligible change. So I think if you look at this, that green really sticks out. Look at Oklahoma here. What a huge boom in Oklahoma. Oklahoma may not have been on your radar, but if interest is high, maybe you should reconsider Oklahoma as a potential opportunity for a franchise. Same with Mississippi and Louisiana, Iowa, New Mexico, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio. Those are probably on your lists, but I would probably guess Iowa, Oklahoma, Mississippi, and New Mexico are not high on your priority list of finding potential prospects or candidates. But given the interest, or West Virginia, given the interest, you may want to consider those states as potential options for you. Georgia still grew, Tennessee still grew, Florida, Texas, modest growth, California, same, but just some things for you to take a look at. Certainly the volume at a certain point trumps percentage increase, right? I mean, if just the sheer volume for these large states, Florida, Texas, California, New York, they're huge states. So there need to be big swings to get the change, percentage change to increase, but just something for you to take a look at. And then, one other thing I wanted to take a look at, this is from Statista. I don't even know how to say it, but I think it's Statista.com, Statista.com. Anyway, this was published yesterday, February 11th, 2020. This is what is going on this shows a 7-day moving average of newly confirmed COVID-19 cases worldwide by WHO region, by the World Health Organization region. So the red is Americas, purple is Europe, this greenish color is Southeast Asia, orange is Eastern Mediterranean, yellow is Africa, light blue is Western Pacific, and then the gray is other. Okay, and I want you to notice something that's really interesting. Okay, whatever has been happening for lockdown, shutdowns, not open, this, that, or the other, as a collective whole, what's interesting to notice is the trends globally are basically the same, which means that, this is kind of reacting in a similar fashion here. We see these rise, and you can see that all of these lines all tend to be, there, I'll make this a little bit bigger here. Let me view the image. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay. So when we take a look at this, we can see this. Now we see the spike here. We see it dropped, down around kind of Christmas. Things slowed down, a little spike at the beginning of the year, kind of in line with a flu season type of a thing. And then all of a sudden the vaccines, I would imagine this downward trend has something to do with vaccines coming out, right? Worldwide vaccines started happening, in that early January into now February time period. So we're starting to see these cases decline. At least it sure would seem that way. So what does that mean? Well, I think this is a telling chart to show that, hey, if cases are going down, that means deaths should be following suit along the way, and hopefully keeping our fingers crossed, helping build confidence that the general consumer and buyers and future business owners will have a greater comfort level of moving forward, seeing these trends declining as opposed to increasing or inclining. One last thing I thought would be fun to showcase. This was an awesome article that was published by Restaurant Business Online. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I published this about a week or so ago. Actually, this came out February 5th, so it was exactly a week ago, by Jonathan Mays. And I just thought this was a cool franchise story to talk about, since we're talking about franchise sales trends and marketing trends. As franchise marketing and salespeople, especially if you're in with a brand that has less than 100 or even 200 units, franchisees, even with hundreds of units, still make an impact on the business itself. And so all of the food items here, certainly we're familiar with food, all of these things were created by franchisees. So just remember to share with your franchisee prospects as they're getting further along in the process, they still can make an impact and still can make a difference. Franchisee created the Big Mac and the Egg McMuffin and the Blizzard at Dairy Queen. And I think that's a double quarter pounder and a bucket of chicken from KFC. And the fillet of fish. So here are the Big Macs and double quarter pounders that were created by franchisees. Blizzards, and then KFC, the serving a bucket of chicken came through franchisees. Bacon on a burger. This was a pretty cool story. I thought this was pretty neat. This person called, last name Mulder, bought a franchise in 1963 for an A&W root beer stand, and he really liked bacon, and so he is credited with being the first person to put bacon on a cheeseburger. And he said, because, well, he liked bacon on his food, so he put it on there and then sold it. And the rest is history. Bacon goes on just about everything now. So I thought that was kind of cool. So anyway, if you haven't read that, let me see if I can share that with everyone here as well. I will stop sharing my screen and just kind of open things up for any questions really quick. You can chat. Here's this article if you want to read that. You can type into the chat box here if you have any questions or comments, things you'd like to share, trends you're seeing in the franchise marketing space or sales space here. And by the way, while you're all doing that, I will say, just from our client activity and things we've seen with our own clients on a national basis, we have noticed a trend, especially in January and into February here, a real uh, increase in franchise, not only interest, the number of leads have gone up pretty dramatically for our clients over the last even 6 weeks or 8 weeks. But we are also seeing the level of interest in that the candidate that's not just inquiring, but interested in purchasing has increased significantly. So we're definitely seeing that and feeling that internally, just from kind of more of a qualitative approach as opposed to quantifying everything. So please, questions. Let's see, we're in a webinar format, so I think you might be able to either type it in the box, or if you can raise your hand or click one of the buttons, or type in talk please into the chat box, and I'll unmute you. We've got a smaller group, so we can definitely unmute you so you can ask any questions or make any comment. With that being said, I'd like to thank you for tuning in. Feel free to ping me. We will get a recording of this back out and published as a recording if you want to share this with anyone on your team. Really appreciate you being here today. Have a great rest of your weekend, and thanks again for tuning in to the Navigating the Coronavirus Economy series. We really appreciate it.